Home sales are soaring, and some are calling it a seller's market here in St. Louis. So what is all this selling tell us about our economy? Happy housing days are here again, or is this a market that could take off and leave a lot of people behind? We've got a charming, cosmopolitan, fixer-upper of a show with 3.5 guests and room to grow. So stay tuned.
So we're going to do the show.
Stay Tuned brings together local experts, journalists, civic leaders, and regular people to have tough conversations for a stronger St. Louis. Add your voice to our conversation, and you're at the table as we stay on top of current events and go deeper, bringing more light and less heat to the issues that matter. From the 9 network of public media in Grand Center, this is Stay Tuned. 15 to the roll. 45. For sale signs are switching to sold all over the area, and the data tell us home sales are up. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, home sales in the St. Louis area have outpaced the national rate for the 4th straight quarter, and home prices are also appreciating, but not quite at the national average. So what's going on in St. Louis real estate, and what does it mean for anyone trying to buy a home? Lenders say they've learned from the Great Recession. Does that mean it's harder for some to buy into the American dream, or has reality reshaped that dream?
So we established, to be clear, I'm the half. These are the 3 holes. Let me introduce them to you, and we'll dive right in here. First, John Gormley, the CEO of St. Louis Association of Realtors. Thanks for being on the show. Kim Hibbs, president of the Home Builders Association of St. Louis, former Channel 5 on-air personality that you may recognize, and Chris Krameyer, president and CEO of Beyond Housing, who you'll probably recognize from Stay Tuned. Thank you all for being here.
Great to be here.
Let's just kind of start with what I seem to hear a lot anecdotally from people who have the means, have the desire to buy a house. It's hard to buy a house in St. Louis right now. Is it as hot as people seem to think it is?
It's a real busy market already this year, and we've seen prices rising. So our median sales price for St. Louis City and County combined is just right below 160,000. That's 10% above what it was last March. So prices are rising, and inventory is falling. So the demand is starting to heat up.
And I can also tell you from a new construction standpoint, our permits are up 15%, month to month. So there is definitely a resurgence in the new construction industry in the St. Louis area as well.
Some more from that same report from the Post. January sales, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, typically a slow month, up 23% from a year earlier in the St. Louis City and County. Typically houses selling in 126 days, down from 180. Yeah, we're hearing things like, bidding wars and homes going in 24 hours. Are you seeing that in real numbers?
Yeah, we are. And I think that's what's driving, the industry right now in general, whether you're buying existing homes or building new homes. There is a huge demand out there right now for homes. There's not enough existing inventory on the market. Mortgage rates are low. So there's several reasons that are driving this rush to buy a house.
Things slowed down in the recession, the Great Recession, and they haven't, in terms of, maybe some parts have picked up and others haven't. The construction hasn't picked up?
No, we have, definitely.
But back to those levels, I mean.
Oh, if you're talking about back to the historic levels where we were back in 2006, 2007, 2008, no, we aren't back to that level yet. But we have seen appreciable growth year after year after year for the past 2 or 3 years, and our numbers are definitely up.
Across the board, is this just in districts with just in areas with good school districts? Are there parts of the community that are maybe getting left behind on this?
Well, sure. I mean, the underlying reasons why you buy and where you buy have a whole lot to do with lots of different things, not the physical structure in and of itself. So clearly, those places, a lot of places where my organization works, we're struggling to attract people because of all those other amenities that are problematic. Now, we do first-time home buyers training all throughout the region, and we're seeing a big uptick in people interested in becoming homeowners, right? This belief that this millennial generation is not interested in home ownership, we don't think is necessarily true. I think there's some differential between what they're really interested in and where, and again, what it has access to relative to their home. But the belief in the American dream of buying your home is still pretty strong here in the St. Louis marketplace. Great prices, great interest rates from the lending side. So, why rent if you have the opportunity to buy?
Chris brings up an interesting point because there's been a lot of press of late talking about the millennial generation and why aren't they buying homes. But if you pick up any kind of a trade publication or some of our national publications over the past few weeks and few months, you'll see that the millennials are now very active in entering the market, whether they're buying existing or considering building a new home. And they are coming off the sideline. They are very interested in buying a house one way or another, so they're engaging at this point.
I mean, we've seen a pretty big shift in the last 5 to 7 years in our first-time home buyers program. It used to be, as a general rule, single heads of household with kids. We're seeing a lot of single individuals now who are saying, I want to buy. Right? There's no, why would I rent if I can actually buy, build some equity, build my assets, and again, have this be my first home that maybe can lead to my second home and my third home. So there's clearly still a strong interest in becoming a homeowner.
And part of the reason too is that rental rates were continuing to go up and up and up for so many years. It was pricing people out of the market. It was more attractive to buy a home.
There's a lot to unpack there. One second, because we're going to talk about the millennials. This is a great time to talk about what we heard from a lot of people on social media. Not to say that only millennials are in our Twitter poll. I want to be clear about that.
But it might make up a good
percentage. It might.
It
might. I've participated in a Twitter poll or two in my time, and I don't think I qualify as a millennial. Twitter poll: is owning a home part of? Chris, you talked about this. You said American dream. Is it part of your American dream? 2/3 say it is. Mm-hmm. I think that might surprise people. And again, we know that these things aren't necessarily scientific here, but you're saying it is still part of the definition that millennials might have.
Every generation has shifts and change in terms of what they're interested in and why. So clearly, the connectivity of our devices says, for some, it doesn't really matter where the roof is, right? My life is around other things, but there's so many who still like, look, I know how I grew up, I know what was important. As I start thinking about having a family, what do I want, right? And what are things that are important to me? And it always comes back to, I want a home, right? When we think of the idea of home, there's a certain thing that all of us have this warm feeling about. I remember my first home. I remember where I grew up. So yeah, as we're younger, we're doing a lot of other different things. When it comes time to say, okay, really, what do you want to do for you and your family? No matter what your family composition is, it comes back to, let's think about buying a home and what does that mean? And there's lots of ways to get assistance and get some help. And again, in St. Louis, great prices, mortgage rates are great time to be buying.
Surprisingly, in St. Louis, 47% of all home buyers are millennials.
That's higher than the national average.
It is, yeah. And in fact,
Realtor.com, quite a bit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Realtor.com just last month said that St. Louis is the #3 market for first-time buyers in the whole country. So even though our prices are rising, and yes, there is an inventory issue, it's a real popular place for people to come. There's good jobs here. There's growth here, and when employers are looking at places to come, they see the middle of the country, affordable lifestyle, and the millennials are really loving St. Louis.
And you had mentioned Realtor.com. They also had a stat out that was very interesting to talk about why we're talking about this subject today. St. Louis is #2 in the country when it comes to pent-up demand. So there's another reason that the housing industry is really starting to boom.
But are we fooling ourselves? Let me push back on you guys here just for a second. This is according to the Washington Post, based on data gathered by the 2013 Nobel Peace Prize winner, or not Peace, Nobel Prize winner for economics, Robert Shiller. Housing prices have compounded at an annual rate of just 0.3% when you adjust for inflation. Comparison, that same period going over the several decades where the S&P 500 had a return of 6.5%. That we kind of, the article, The Economist, they say we kind of romanticize the value of investing in a home when the numbers tell us that you're better off investing elsewhere.
That's an economist saying that. I mean, over the years, and it's still true today, most Americans build their wealth in the equity in their homes.
And I will push back against that number a little bit too, because just doing some research in my normal course of the business day over the past few days, I've come across information that talks about the St. Louis area being up nearly 4% for the past several years. And we're back to bust days with our home values and everything. So I'll push back against that because I just don't think it's accurate. Maybe it is in other parts of the country, but not in St. Louis.
Well, let's just take kind of the central corridor here where we see a lot of construction cranes over the past few months and still now. A lot of residential high-rises going up, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't believe any of them are condos. These are all apartments that are being built for rent. Does that tell us anything? Is the market changing in that area?
I mean, look, I would suggest that there's still need for all different types of housing stock here in the region, right? There's been some pent-up demand, and again, through life's changes, right? I I can't go through a day without somebody saying, yeah, I moved back into the Central West End, right? People, you know, had a nice home out in the county or other places of the city and saying, look, I want to be closer to some other amenities. And again, building that kind of stock, you know, again, makes some sense. So look, we don't over romanticize. Clearly, you know, homeownership has never been for everyone, right? The numbers will say that. But at the end of the day, if you're interested in becoming a homeowner, St. Louis is a great place to do it for a whole host of reasons. Again, the markets that we work in, it's more challenging, right? There needs to be housing subsidies, again, to make it work, to allow people to, again, be in places where the market doesn't work, right? So the places we work, you can't build a house, right? Kim can't build a house in our community and sell it for what he built it for, right? So the challenge then becomes in a place like that, how do we as a region say, how are we going to support that housing market in those places where the market itself doesn't work? Because we can't just throw our hands up and say, well, there's nothing for us to do, because that impacts the quality of schools, that impacts, again, a whole host of things that will, again, cause some of the, what we call the Ferguson metaphor, right? What are all the challenges that our region faces that we have to address? And there's not one magical thing we need to do. There's lots of things, including supporting the housing market in all throughout the St. Louis region.
Are you suggesting that it's worth the investment of the larger community to help folks build homes, establish neighborhoods in areas where, as you said, the market is not doing it naturally?
Absolutely, because if we don't, what's going to happen? Right, so there's been lots of conversations where we say, let's say, for example, again, a lot of our work around, well, we need to consolidate all the municipalities and magic things will get better. And my comment is, well, let's make the schools get better first. Let's have our housing stock get stronger. Let's have our, you know, commercial stock get stronger as well. And if those things happen, that will fix a lot of our other challenges. And again, if we don't do it, or we can't just abandon places, right, and say, okay, well, we're going to keep moving west or going back over to, you know, to the east side, right? Again, there's wonderful housing stock in lots of places in the region, but if we don't invest in them and again provide a level of subsidy, so again, you know, developers, builders can make the economics of it work. I mean, look, people want to live in communities all throughout the region, right? So we do a lot of work in the Northeast School District. People still want to live there, even though there's all these challenges. There's history, there's reasons why folks want to be there. We're trying to invest in the housing stock there to, again, try to help this community get stronger and healthy. And from a regional perspective, we would be foolish not to say, what can we do to invest some capital to boost places that today aren't as strong as we'd like them to be.
And I'll add a little weight to that, because for every home, every single home you build in a community, over the course of the year, you bring in more than 3 jobs, 3 permanent jobs. You bring in over $200,000 in income that they spend throughout the area, and it also helps the tax base. So no matter where you're helping build houses, it's important.
Where are you seeing it the hottest right now? I've had, again, anecdotally, people saying that they've wanted a house in a particular neighborhood with a particular school district, and in 24 hours, or even before it went on the market, that house was sold.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is right. All across St. Louis, there's great housing stock. There's a variety. There's downtown condo living. There's out in the suburbs. There's ranchettes. So there's lots of variety.
I've never heard the word ranchette.
Well,
I want to meet a ranchette.
Yeah,
I've never
ranch. Ranch homes.
There are, but
that's awesome. I like that.
Crestwood right now is one of the most popular places. It's very affordable.
Shows up in some of those national articles that you see that we were kind of talking about too.
It does. It does. So 63126 is one of the most popular zip codes right now in the country.
You have to add in those 63122. Kirkwood. Oh my gosh.
Kirkwood is
as
where I
a new
live,
construction builder. I'm a custom builder. I can't tell you how many people call me and say, we want to build in Kirkwood, and if it's not Kirkwood, it's Webster or it's Brentwood. That central Highway 40 corridor, there is so much new construction going on in there right now. It's one of the hot areas. St. Charles County, at least for new construction, always remains hot. But you're even seeing it in Lincoln County, Franklin County, Jefferson County. At least from a new construction standpoint, you're kind of seeing it throughout the area.
Is that changing at all? Are you seeing more new construction closer in where people might traditionally think that housing stock is already there?
Yeah, I do, because think about some of the housing stock that we have along that corridor. It's 40, 50, 60 years old. It's inefficient. It's outdated when it comes to people who are looking for open floor plans, looking for some different design ideas. And so you're going to see quite a bit more infill construction, as we call it, all throughout that corridor. And some of our production builders are finding pockets of land where they can do a nice development, maybe not as big as some of the developments they're used to, but we even have some of the bigger builders finding these pockets and able to do some infill building there.
Well, I think I live in a ranchette in Richmond Heights, and they're doing teardowns in our community and building houses. They're a lot bigger than my ranchette.
So I just want to go back to that one other idea, though, that maybe we sometimes think that homes will only appreciate? I mean, right there, we're talking about homes that are outdated. Is that not a factor in some of this? I mean, especially as more technology comes on, our homes, are they completely deflation proof?
Well, after what we just went through, I don't know that I would ever say that, but I think over the long period, if you look at it long term, I think that you could make that case. But if you look at it over just a few year period, you know, the economy took a big hit back in the 2007, 8, 9, time frame. And it took years to recover from that, but we did recover. So I think if you give it a long enough window, I think you could make the case that maybe it is recession-proof.
Well, and St. Louis didn't have the big booms and busts as many other places, right? We had steady growth, but we didn't have these, exponential, crazy, double-digit annual growth periods, and then, corresponding double digits off the cliff, declines, right? So yeah, clearly we saw some downturns. Why is your home going to appreciate? Yes, it's the structure itself, right? But there's so many other things, right? So again, if you're in places that have solid schools and your location is good and all these other things fit in place, it's not going to be a guarantee, but you feel pretty solid over time. It's going to stay with you and you're going to have appreciated value.
Let's get some of those voices. We were talking about millennials. Let's hear from some millennials. We're trying them out on Snapchat and other social media as well, but here's a couple of responses we got this week.
Next 3 to 5 years, do you see yourself renting or owning?
I'll say owning.
Owning?
Yeah. The reason I'm going to be owning because I don't want to rent and then pay more money each year for the rent, especially in this place. Okay, I'd rather just be on my own, rather have everything to myself.
Next 3 to 5 years, do you plan on renting or owning?
Renting. I'm not a maintenance man. I'm not trying to get caught up in working on a house and a lawn. And also, another housing bubble could come across.
So, they touched on a lot of kind of what we were saying there. First of all, the single individual who says, I'm fine on my own. You're seeing that more. You don't, people not waiting to start the traditional two-person household, kids and a dog.
Yeah, again, people are going to make, I think, both an economic choice, but they're looking around saying, wow, I can buy that house and I can pay in a mortgage payment less than I'm paying in rent, and I'm going to build equity. So why if I'm interested in that, why on earth would I rent?
St. Louis, it still is cheaper to buy than rent. And a lot of the country, if you look out west, it's cheaper to rent, generally speaking. But St. Louis, in the middle corridor of the country, it's still more affordable to buy.
These interest rates, I mean, that, if nothing else, that should drive people to seriously consider buying a home at this point because of that very reason. You can get into a home with these interest rates and your monthly payments are going to be less than if you're renting.
But can everybody get into those interest rates as easily? The lenders learned their lessons, they tell us, and loans are a little harder to get now than they used to be, even maybe for some homeowners already in a home. Is that clogging the system a little bit too? I've got this house that people want to buy, but I may not be able to get another loan.
It is a little harder to get a loan. The pendulum has swung maybe a little bit too far from the subprime loans, and it was too easy to get a loan at one point. And that led to a lot of economic problems on a macro level. I think it's coming back to an equilibrium. It is a little harder.
There's no doubt about it. I'm glad you said that it is swinging back because that's something that we have experienced over the past couple of years. That 4 or 5 years ago, we did run into more issues with lending where people would not qualify and we could not build homes because of it. But we are seeing where I think a more common sense approach, if I can use that term, is kind of taking hold again, where we've learned lessons from that huge downturn. But we've also learned the common sense approach, which allows people to go ahead and borrow, those people that are qualified, and to borrow the money that they need to go ahead and buy a home, whether it's existing or build new.
Is it harder for first-time buyers in your experience, Chris, in terms of needing more for a down payment? That's something that's definitely changed in lending.
Look, it's always been a challenge and continues to be today, right? So home ownership is not meant to be this simple, easy path, right? There has to be a level of commitment. You have to be, the ability to repay, right? Or what a radical concept, right? You actually have to be able to repay the loan, right? So yeah, I mean there are guidelines that were too loose, as John said, and then probably tightened up too much. And again, we are seeing it's coming back. Look, if you have a good job, steady employment history, and you have decent credit, you can get a mortgage. And if your credit's not good, there's organizations like mine and others will help you work on it. Right? It's not rocket science, right? It just takes time, energy, and effort, right? And patience is not always what our society is good at these days.
I'm going to have to cut you off right there. I'm So when are we going to have enough homes? Because you would agree the inventory overall is not what the demand is. There's still more demand than inventory for new homes. Is that
That's a
accurate?
fair statement.
It is.
When will we have enough homes? What's clogging us up?
I mean, I will say from my perspective, I still think there's a little bit of apprehension out there. I think
On your builder's part?
Well, yeah, but part of it too, Casey, is what happened is during the downturn, it gave the municipalities a lot of opportunities to rethink how they wanted to do business with builders. And so what used to take, a few months to get permits for developing property now can take a year or more. There's a lot more red tape, there's a lot more cost involved. So we're seeing what's clogging the system a little bit is just the municipalities we're working with not as easy to work with as they have been in the past. So that's slowing the system down. We've got, everybody has a short memory. It hasn't been that long ago before we went through the downturn. So that's kind of in the back of everyone's minds. We got to get geared up a little bit. Land shortages, there's not a lot of land out there. It's harder and harder to find land to build on. So
because it feels like we were willing to build all the way to Jefferson City and the other side of Illinois. I'm surprised to hear that there's a shortage of land.
There is. There's a shortage of land because, again, keep in mind, we're talking about this central corridor and how hot it is, but it's already built out. There's already, municipalities there that have been there for years. So if you look at that central corridor, it's harder and harder to find land there. And like I said, St. Charles County is still hot. Lincoln, Franklin, Jefferson County, you can still find good opportunities out there. But it's just taking longer and costing more to develop the land as well, and that's kind of clogging the system up.
Well, speaking of kind of the range of the proximity and the regional kind of where the land are the appetites changing. We've talked about Realtor.com. So this is Jonathan Smoke, the chief economist at Realtor.com. He's quoted as saying in the Post-Dispatch, young people are not looking for new construction in the suburbs. Do you see that in your work?
I don't see that.
I see the millennials looking all over St. Louis. Some of them do want to go to West County, some of them like St. Charles, but others like the downtown high-rise lifestyle. So it's really hard to characterize that one generation. They are a huge generation, though.
And I guess we need them for this whole system to keep working.
Absolutely. And Chris alluded to this earlier. Millennials, that old stereotype that they're going to live in the parents' basement forever, that's not true. The data does not support that. They want to invest in their communities. They want a certain lifestyle. They want walkability scores. That's why they love Kirkwood.
Exactly.
And they do want to be homeowners.
And they're looking for homes that have the open floor plans. They're looking for homes that fit their lifestyle today. That's one of the reasons that I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with that statement. I think they do want to buy new construction because I get phone calls and emails from them all the time talking about, what is it going to take to build a home, and, so they're out there and they want to build. It's just helping educate them and having them understand the process and helping them with their, the credit and getting the loans and going through the process and everything.
Do you see a proximity to the central corridor as a desirable factor?
Yeah, I mean, we just did 219 loans with Wells Fargo in a 6-month period. They had a down payment subsidy program, and we could have done probably 1,000. And folks were saying, and it was all buying in the city of St. Louis. And literally there was, both sides of the central corridor. We saw lots of activity. Lots of folks wanting, again, to get their piece of the American dream. And I think something, back to your earlier comment about, appreciation over time. Yes, people are worried about what's their house going to be worth at the long stage. Most folks aren't thinking about that when they're going through the process. They're like, I love the house, I can't wait to move in, my neighbors, and all this other emotional stuff. That, of course, it's important that it appreciates over time. But people aren't thinking, oh no, boy, what's going to be worth in 30 years from now? They're thinking, I love this home for all the right emotional reasons and for other practical reasons. I like the schools, I like the neighborhood. It's close to things that are important to me. So again, I think sometimes people overanalyze, right? Oh, I bought this home simply as an investment. Well, yeah, I want it to be investment. I don't want it to lose value. But they're also not making some. They don't have the Pulitzer Prize, economists in the family saying, I'm not sure if that's a good thing to do. You should take that money and.
They're more interested in the next month's budget, maybe, or the 12 months budget than they are generational wealth.
Home is an emotional thing, right? Yes, it means so much in your life in terms of the context of who you are as a person, how it prepares you for the rest of your life. So yes, there's a whole lot of statistics and data we can put out there. But again, when we think about home, and we believe in this idea that home matters, and yes, it's about the roof where you live, but it's the life in and around where you live, right? So when I grew up, I remember, playing ball with my friends and going to the park. I remember riding my bike. I remember the neighbors, right? I remember all those kinds of things, not just the physical structure itself.
And Chris is absolutely right. There's not a one-size-fits-all as far as what people are looking for, because some people do want to live a little bit further out and in a subdivision kind of atmosphere or neighborhood. Some people want to live in the central corridor where they can walk to restaurants and walk to transportation. We're finding that, that there's just a lot of opportunity out there because there's such a diverse group that wants to live in different areas. And I think that's why you see construction expanding west and construction very busy in the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County and in all over that central corridor.
John, we have just about a minute left, a little bit less actually. Tell me what you see for the rest of this year. We're off to if we're off to a great start. I know you're an optimistic guy in an optimistic profession, but give us as true a read as you possibly can.
Well, it is. Things are already lined up as a seller's market in St. Louis for different. Just the demand is outpacing the supply. New construction is going to help. Definitely, it takes a while for that to catch up. We're certainly looking for that. Also, sellers are wondering if I'm going to sell, I'll probably make a good amount of money, but where am I going to live? If I've got to have a place to move to. One thing about the first-time home buyers, what Chris does with his organization is great. St. Louis Association of Realtors, we're involved. We're trying to get involved in revitalizing communities, helping Chris and other partners. But first-time buyers need the right education so that they can not only buy the home but also keep it.
I'll stop you there. I have to say that we want to take a second. There's a special event next week. Friday and Saturday evening, we'll be showing the marathon session of the 14-part civil rights documentary, Eyes on the Prize. It will broadcast on air as well in the public media commons outside the station. We'll have a special. Stay tuned to celebrate it.